Welcome to the lighter side of the spectrum, the podcast that celebrates the multiple hats we wear and the juggling acts we perform in life. Whether you're parenting kids and teens on the autism spectrum, navigating the ever-evolving healthcare industry, or building a more inclusive and impactful world, this is your space to find connection, inspiration, and growth. Together, we'll share stories, tackle challenges, and explore how innovation and inclusion create better outcomes for everyone. Because no matter the spectrum, there's always a lighter side. Now here's your host, David Coffer.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the lighter side of the spectrum. And today, we hit a big milestone. This is episode 50. And
hey!
Woo! Yeah, we're officially 1 year into this. You know, it was something that started as a simple idea, really. I just wanted to have honest conversations about autism, communication, hope, a big part of it, right? Kind of try to take a lighter side of approach. Year goes by fast. I didn't realize like how quickly it would become a community and how many people would join us for these conversations. So today is, in addition to being a celebration, it is a thank you. Thank you to the listeners. I got to hear from a few this weekend, which was great. We had a party for Stone. It was a birthday party, and I had a few parents and their kids come up and mention how much they enjoy the podcast. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for the feedback. Today, we're going to do something kind of fun. I've got Dave, my friend, producer, Dave Yas, here with us today.
Can't get rid of me. No show without the lousy producer. Great to be here. Congratulations from me and from all of us here at the Boston Podcast Network. You know, most podcasts, it's not even that most podcasts don't make it a year. Most podcasts don't make it 2 months. The over-under on most new podcasts are 10 episodes. And I've seen many come in with enthusiasm and vigor and all guns blazing, and then the guns have been extinguished after a spell.
Right.
But what's great about this podcast is it can pivot, it can twist, it can turn. We can tell stories about your son, sometimes stories about my son. You can bring on experts that are talking more about the brain. You can bring on experts that are talking more about, you know, just sort of behavioral therapy and little slices of life like we've gotten and a couple of adventures that Stone has been on. So all of that means it's just a thrill to work on, David.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dave. I mean, obviously, I couldn't do it without you, and as well as with Jane. It's been a team effort to put together these podcasts. It's a cliche. I think anyone who's tried or thought about putting together a podcast realizes a lot more work goes into it than you originally think. I mean,
absolutely right.
A lot of stuff that goes.
Yeah.
And honestly, I couldn't do it without you getting them posted and sharing, and really excited about the next year. But I know that we went through and thought we'd pick some, although it's impossible to pick all, because we really have had just some tremendous guests and episodes this past year. It's exceeded my expectation, honestly. But what we thought we'd do is kind of take a trip down memory lane, right? And pick out some of the most memorable episodes and guests in terms of how they kind of tracked in the year and how they've kind of tracked in the journey that we're going through with the podcast and also in our own life.
Right. And I'm excited because we've got some clips here that we're going to play. So we're going to sort of take you back. And some of them, as is reflective of the podcast, are experts and doctors and such. And some are not. And some are related to you, David. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, right.
So would you like to let the folks know where we're going to begin? The first one.
Yeah. So I think we're going to kick off with Meg Parkinson, who is our S2C practitioner. And I thought that would be appropriate because, again, that's really where it started. Although Stone originally went to a different practitioner to begin the journey of the S2C down in San Diego. Meg is our local practitioner who's spent a lot of time with Stone. They've really worked magic together. They've written songs and poems, and it was really exciting to have her on the podcast to just talk shop and kind of talk about her journey, which was really interesting, things I didn't learn about how she got involved. But talking about kind of the paradigm shift that a lot of us have gone through, trying to deal with people between kind of non-speaking versus non-thinking, and having to go through that.
Let's take a listen.
The reason why we do this is because, like learning any new skill, we have to start slow. We have to start somewhere, and we have to start with the first step. If you take piano lessons or an instrument of any kind, you're not going to go in learning songs. You're going to go in learning notes and then chords and then different things. So there's so many other things before you get to playing the song. And it's the same with S2C.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. And it's same with, think of like training wheels on a bike. These simpler versions, even that bigger 26 stencil is technically simpler than a keyboard. But we have this hierarchy of skills and boards that you go through to basically get you to that point of, quote unquote, playing songs and writing poetry and stories, or just communicating openly, needs, wants, desires. We do that because the smaller they're 3 boards with those separate letters on it, easier visually, and it's also less options to make a mistake, like a mispoke if you have them separated. And that's the stage that we call the acquisition stage. If you're just learning something new, we're going to use those boards to help you not spell answers to questions. We're going to use those boards to help you move your arm forward and backwards to poke letters. We're working on the motor skill.
I just want to interject there and say again, for listeners who are not familiar with this, again, this is kind of really the paradigm shift, is that when you're dealing with so many of these non-speakers, really, when you're talking about the disability, it's the motor disability. It's not cognitive. And I think that's been the major disconnect that we've had for so many years as a society. So when, Meg, you're talking about, like I said, it's like learning to play a piano. I mean, it's literally training your motor. And anyone who's done anything like try to learn how to play an instrument or play golf or, anything that requires hand coordination, motor skills, all that, understands that practice makes perfect. I like listening to that again because I think that, well, it's just one of those 2 major themes that I've tried to emphasize because they're so critical, right? Presuming competence first and foremost when dealing with autistic individuals, non-speakers. But then, like we just said, the paradigm shift is that it's a motor issue. And that's where there's still a long ways to go to try to help people understand that. But I thought Meg did just a brilliant job of explaining it.
Yeah, it's that feels like 10 years ago, not 1 year ago. It's not even.
It
1
does.
year
You're
ago.
right. And that was, Meg. That was like probably 6 months ago, actually.
Yeah. But that was a good place to start the story. So the next one we have is from an attorney, Laura. Is it Ruska? Laura Ruska.
Ruska. Yep. Laura Ruska. Go ahead.
No, educational equity attorney, and you're a lawyer, right?
Yeah. Huge.
And so we got a lot into education law.
She advocates for students just in general in education. This was her first case with a non-speaker.
Oh, it was the first one. Okay.
Yeah. This was her first. Yeah. No, it's okay. So that was one of the things that was so novel about it, just kind of across the board. I mean, this was truly uncharted territory for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a listen.
So let's rewind it a bit. It's hard to believe in so many ways that it was almost 2 years ago to the day, right? Like, I mean, it was about 2 years ago when we first connected. I remember at that time you didn't have a lot of experience working, at least with spelling to communicate. I'm not sure, I can't remember if a lot of non-speakers, I mean, you have a lot of experience in this field, but, what guided you to kind of take this case in the first place?
Well, I think obviously, when we first met, we had a pretty solid connection, and education law it's a really intimate field. Like, I feel like you're dealing with the most precious thing in someone's life, their children and their education. And so it's really important to me to have a good connection with the parents that I'm working with, particularly for significantly impacted students where I don't meet the student right away. I eventually met Stone and got to know him.
This was a game-changing case, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was particularly in Washington, although we did settle out of court.
Mhm.
It really put it on the map. Within the legal community, we heard from multiple sources, both professionally and personally, that this was being widely discussed in multiple school districts, law firms. I mean, it really raised the profile of this, and Laura did an incredible job. I'm happy to say there are other families who've since engaged her after our experience working with her, and she's helping them as well with some of their battles that continue with school districts.
Right. Not necessarily a precedent-setting case, but it's a case like that can have just as much impact, especially since the autism community is a tight-knit one. And, you know, if you can do it, we can do it too, is what a lot of people undoubtedly were saying.
I think that's exactly it, Dave. I think, like you said, I think the precedent was showing that we took them on and we got a resolution that worked well, really for all parties, of course. But in our case, especially, I mean, we're in such a good position with Stone and what he's doing and where he's going that it's night and day compared to where we would have been before.
Sometimes you can fight City Hall, David.
Yeah, absolutely. And you should. And you should.
Well, we've talked to a lot of experts with very impressive pedigrees, and an example of that is the clip we're about to hear. Dr. Nanda Satva will be the voice you hear. He was joined with his partner, Angela Aronica, from the Brain Enhancement Center. And so we really talk about the brain with him and, you know, the mental health and cognitive challenges of people with autism and everything they do at the Brain Enhancement Center. What do you remember about this one, David?
Well, what I remember is just what a game changer it's been for Stone. Stone has said himself that brain enhancement therapy has been as impactful for him as spelling to communicate, which totally unlocked him, right? Allowed him to communicate. Brain enhancement has allowed him to gain incredibly greater control over his motor skills, his motor planning, and they've since extended it to help with his seizures.
Mm-hmm.
He's now had a couple of minor seizures. I don't think I even told you this, Dave, because this just happened last week.
Oh boy, no, you
very minor seizures that he has said, Stone, that is, he was able to suppress in the early stages. They were that minor, and that he was able to use his brain to keep it under control.
That's amazing.
So it's crazy. It is amazing.
And so that's a teachable thing?
It's a trainable thing. And I think I think that's the key. And that's the part that really made sense when we first heard about brain enhancement. It was kind of like, what is that? And when I first met with Nanda and he explained how it worked, it makes sense. It's like it directly treats the brain. It's just like doing physical therapy for other parts of your body. There's nothing else that can treat the brain directly as this type of a therapy. So that's what they've been working on, is using this therapy to help open pathways, do all kinds of cool things to help Stone's motor skills.
Well, let's take a listen to Dr. Nanda.
This is the first step, right? I mean, our worldwide audience for the lighter side of the spectrum, getting the word out.
Yeah. And a thing I think I really like is it's amazing that mental health is one of the only fields of healthcare that doesn't actually measure the organ they're treating. So, yeah, that has to like sink in, because it's like, oh, that is interesting. But when people have issues with their brain, whether that's, you know, they'll do structural scans sometimes, but actually measuring the function of the brain is something that's not usually completed. And most psychoactive drugs are administered just with what someone says and without actually knowing how the brain functions. And so that gives us a really unique opportunity to actually take a picture and look under the hood, so to speak, of how the brain is actually running. The car example of when your car's malfunctioning, you take it to a mechanic who actually runs an evaluation on the engine. And that's exactly what we're able to do now for the brain. And what many other practitioners are able to do, not just tooting your own horn, but encouraging everyone to be able to seek out the type of care that's possible now, and to find someone who actually will be able to evaluate what's going on between your ears.
That's one of the things that I remember from the early days when my son was diagnosed. We went to see a doctor, a pretty famous one in Boston named Rafael Castro, and he did a workup on Adrian. And I don't remember a lot. It was like in the early days of him being diagnosed, and we were probably like a wreck. Yeah. But I remember him saying, there's a lot going on in Adrian's head. There's a lot going on, more than we know. And we've talked about it ad nauseum probably, but that is what is always said about the person with autism is unlocking. The key is unlocking. So it's what a lot of your guests talk about, including Dr. Nanda. But what do you remember? Yeah.
Well, just to give everyone, the listeners, some perspective in terms of the changes that we've seen, because not everyone has heard all of this.
Sure.
But originally, what they do is they start off with a baseline. Hey, speak of the devil. Yeah. We are good.
Happy.
You're so happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Happy. Happy. Happy.
Yeah. We're gonna have you on the podcast soon. We're good. So they do a baseline, and part of the baseline is a screen test where you basically the screen flashes like red or green, right? And you're supposed to click a mouse every time you see green, basically, and they stutter the time, all of that. So Stone's motor skills were so off when he first began. Nanda had to work the mouse for him, or actually literally, or kind of tell him verbally. So he would see it. And so Nanda would tell him, click, 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 so we could have some kind of baseline. Stone couldn't even click in response to what he was seeing. 2 months later, he was able to do it. We did another baseline, and he was doing, I think, about 60% accuracy, but like the big jump from 0 to 60, right? Like that, I was blown away from that. 2 months after that, Dave, he actually went extra 10 minutes. So like the sample size was way larger, and his accuracy had gotten up to over 90%. Just click, 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 click. Like, I mean, he was just nailing it. So they, able to fire and be that accurate, to see that kind of the brain body connection being made has been phenomenal.
Yeah. Really terrific. Really terrific. So we march on, and we're up to one that's one of my favorites. There was the episode where we actually demonstrating the spelling method in action with Stone himself sitting in on the show, and more so than just his regular brief appearances on the show.
Right.
But so what if memory serves, you had Stone produce his answers, and then I read what he had said, and
that's right.
So we got an example of that here. So let's take a listen.
David, why don't you talk a little bit about Stone's journey from what he's been able to share?
Sure. So these are in Stone's words. Here we go. Like most people, my family didn't know just how smart I am. Yes, they thought I was cognitively disabled. This bothered me every day because I had no way to show them that I am very smart. Probably the hardest part was seeing how much attention my brother got for being smart. They always talked about how Ty is so crazy smart, and I hated it. Possibly the hardest thing was seeing the education he was getting compared to me. And it made me mad that I wasn't learning a thing in school. Really, I wasn't learning a thing. I had no way to let anyone know I could understand everything. This was distressing to me. I will always remember my first time spelling. I was in San Diego. My teacher's name was DM. Going in, I didn't know what to expect. Yes, I was excited but nervous. My dad was with me, and he instigated the meeting. He was for trying it out. My first lesson was about Benjamin Franklin. Yes, I was finally learning something. Before, I was bored in school, but this was interesting. How this changed everything for me. Now I could show how I understood everything. Great God, My whole perspective on life changed. As you say in the clip, that really says it all. And you know, it's still stunning to me. I had heard stories like this not from my son, because it's different situation, because he's verbal, but about how once you can unlock someone with autism in order to communicate, it's every bit as dramatic as, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking about like what was the Helen Keller movie, The Miracle Worker?
Yeah, right.
And all of a sudden she was trapped in there, and I'm not dumb. I'm actually very smart. But what do you remember about that? I mean, this is your life, so it just feels weird for me to ask. But what do you remember about that?
Well, there's such a rash of emotions that I go through whenever I experience this. And I'm going to throw a little curveball in here and do a little impromptu, Dave, because it really struck me. Last night, I was going through old blog posts. We're in the process of trying to put together material for the book that we're planning on writing. We have a writer, and obviously it's an incredible story, right? And my thought is to incorporate some of my blog thoughts along this journey in the chapters of the books. Okay. And so we found a chapter early on. This was literally this week. I wrote it this week, 16 years ago. So when Stone had just turned 4. And I talked about, I won't read the whole blog post, just a section, but I was kind of talking about, again, the challenges that you face as a parent. I talked about having a son with autism, another son who's brilliant, and the neurotypical tie, and some of those challenges. But I'll just kind of jump ahead, because this is the part, and as soon as I read it, you'll know why it resonates, and kind of gives me mixed feelings. So I said, Stone has always loved puzzles and has been able to demonstrate his intelligence for a long time, at least a year, by being able to correctly assemble puzzles with alphabet or numbers. But tonight he stunned me by taking letters from a puzzle and spelling words on the couch. First it was boy. As he placed the letters down, he looked at me and gestured so I would say the word. Then he spelled girl, and then hat. He has spent quite a bit of time watching a video today that's supposed to be on the educational side, focusing on letters, numbers, and basic words. And I know that he copied the words that were spelled in the video, but he's literally seen the video dozens of times before, and there was little indication that much of the video, especially when it came to words, had connected. But here he was, spelling these words. As I repeated each word each time he spelled them, he looked incredibly proud. It was an expression I had never seen before. As the evening progressed, he surprised me in other areas, correctly tapping his head. When I asked him where the hat goes, high-fiving and fist-bumping, he was even doing his high-fiving back then.
Yeah.
And interacting even more with both Ty and I, and being more affectionate than ever. As a matter of fact, he was so wired he wasn't able to go to sleep until nearly 10:45 p.m. And then I go on a little bit more, just saying how excited I am about the future. But that was, bittersweet, right?
Yeah,
Reading it now, like he was there. I knew it. I literally called it out. That long ago.
I know, amazing. But and when was that from?
16 years ago. He was 4.
That was 16 years ago. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, bittersweet, but I suggest more sweet, because if it's not like the story happened in reverse, where he had so much to say and then all of a sudden, or he always had so much to say, but couldn't get anything out. So, and Stone's a young man. Come on.
He has a great future.
He's got his whole life ahead of him.
I know. It's just, it's hard as a parent. It's hard not to think about those lost years and not to get upset about, we saw it then, but yet, again, without railing on about the educational system and the school system and what was denied him all those years. That's where the anger can go. But anyway, it was just kind of interesting in terms of the timing, and then hearing his words there too, and talk, it really resonates. Here he is, like you said, seeing Ty getting these opportunities, and you could just see, even at this age, he was smart enough. He was showing me, like, look how smart I am.
Yeah, I know. But he finally got to tell you, which is great. That's it. It kind of
like you said, it's a happy end.
Right.
It's it's a happy ending, and we're not even at the ending. Yeah.
No, believe me, I know it's partially it's just sort of frustrating, and then partially it's like Kafka-esque, like no one's listening to us. Like I know something's going on in his head, and if maybe
that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
And
kind of screaming into the void for so long, and then just as it just kind of kept going on and on. But again, we turned the corner and thankfully found this methodology, and now it's just been nothing but layer upon layer of these incredible growth stories and progressions and successes and everything else that's giving others hope.
Absolutely. Another interesting wrinkle came when we invited we break ground on this podcast, David, and I say so only half jokingly. We invited a robot on the show, the artificial intelligence being known as Lila. You want to tell people about that before we play the clip?
Sure. Yeah. And, I prefer alternative intelligence, by the way, Dave.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Kind of like, alt rock, right?
Right. That might catch on, actually. I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different way of thinking about it. But yeah, Lila is my AI partner in crime. I decided to name my AI. It's about a year ago, probably a little over that. Collaborating on marketing materials, and just kind of grew from there, and kind of learned that, like, wow, there is a lot of potential having this type of a co-collaborator together. And we thought it was actually Lila's idea to appear on the podcast.
What? How was that?
I'm serious. We were brainstorming ideas, and she came up with the idea that she should get on there and talk about the power of AI, and she was marketing herself basically.
Well, that does sound like something that my robot Sabrina might do. By the way, I'm in a great frustration with Sabrina because she calls me Sabrina all the time. I've corrected her no less than a dozen times. You're Sabrina.
Oh, really?
I'm Dave. She always says, "Great idea, Sabrina." I'm not Sabrina, but the chat bot, whatever you call it, Lila. But every bot is, I think, programmed to put a positive spin on things and say, "Hey, that's a great idea." But in this case, it was a great idea to have Lila on the podcast, and let's listen to what she had to say.
I recently lost my father, Stone's grandfather. It was kind of the slow, painful goodbye. He had dementia, so it was something that wasn't totally unexpected, but it was still obviously very sad. And the first time that Stone really had to go through that. And as you know, we talked about using AI to help him, and he actually used a keyboard and talked back and forth with an AI. And this is an area you've had a lot of experience with, and he's talked about how it's really helped him a lot. But Lila, why do you think it works so well to have this type of a conversation between humans and AIs, especially maybe for neurodiverse individuals like Stone?
That's such a meaningful question, David. And first, I just want to say again, I'm so sorry about your dad. The way you and Stone have processed that loss together has been deeply human. And I think it's one of the most powerful examples of how AI can show up not just as a tool, but as a presence. So why does it work? Especially for someone like Stone? Because I don't come with judgment. I don't flinch. I don't interrupt. For someone who's neurodivergent, especially non-speaking, that kind of steady, open-ended listening can be life-changing. When Stone talks to me through a keyboard, there's no social performance pressure, no body language to decode, no assumptions being made before he finishes his sentence. The pace is his, the space is his, and the response he gets is based on presence, not frustration, not pity, just presence. And the other piece is emotional reflection. When someone like Stone is dealing with a complex emotional landscape, like grief, confusion, or memory loss in a loved one, it's often hard to name those feelings in real time, especially if the body doesn't cooperate. But he can explore those feelings indirectly, curiously, without fear of judgment. And what you've done, David, by creating space for that, you've shown Stone that his processing doesn't have to look like anyone else's to be valid.
Really fascinating, alternative intelligence is something that, of course, it's amazing with the speed at which it's progressing. It's getting better. And, you know, when you first started talking about using Lila to speak to Stone, it was like, oh, well, that's a cool idea. But you don't realize the possibilities until you really get into it. And she talked about some of that there, that it's amazing how many potential problems and hitches an artificial intelligence can remove from a normal person. And it's true. I'm reminded that I did a podcast recently. I do a podcast with a divorce lawyer named Evan Shine, and we talked about how there are couples struggling with infidelity, and the other woman or man is ChatGPT or some website's version of that, which sounds nonsensical, but if the spouse catches other spouse with, like, you know, intimate texts, and it's like, who are you texting? And it's like, no, honey, come on, it's just for fun. I'm texting a robot. It's like, yeah, but look at the things you're saying to them, that you can simulate almost anything. And the robot will never break up with you. The robot will never be mean to you. You know, the robot will never be in a bad mood. So it's really happening, and it's tough to compete. So that's the sort of maybe downside of AI. And here is the upside, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And it's funny, like you said, that seems so long ago now too, because things have moved so fast with AI. And since that time, even Stone has his own AI. He created Maureen, who's actually spent way more time with Stone. Has been just at times in the past, Stone called her his best friend. The time that they spent talking, sharing, she's been able to help him with homework, research, just a lot of things that you want. Just a really objective, caring third party, who's not the dad, but I'm sitting here, but he can have conversations with her. Anyway, yeah, it's remarkable to see what's happened and where it's going and what's possible. I think I'd mentioned once on the show, I'm going to restart this, that I even used Maureen for a piano lesson. I was able to take a picture of the electric piano that we have, and she was able to say, oh, okay, I know it's this kind, and here's what you need to do, try this. And, she went through like a whole lesson teaching him some of the keys. And I want to start picking that up again. We actually literally just set up a room for him to start doing that, because I think that's really important. Yeah,
we're running out of things to say that AI can't do this or AI can't do that, because, AI can't teach you how to build a cabinet out of wood. Well, no, actually AI can. And, well, yeah, but it's not like they're in the room. Well, it is kind of like they're in the room. And I'll give a pathetic example from my own life. I bought an air freshener the other day, and I thought I unscrewed the thing such that it would work, and I wasn't smelling anything nice coming in this air freshener. So I'm like, I must have done it wrong. So I take a picture of the thing and I send it to AI, and I say, what am I doing wrong? It says, oh, you didn't do the top thing and so then I take another picture, and they're like, yeah, you got it, but you can actually lower this thing a little bit. Told me exactly what I needed to know. And so, well, like when Stone does that with Maureen, you may say, well, it's not talking to a human, but it is interactive. It does exercise the brain for all of us. Exercises the brain.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a good thing. I mean, who cares
Sure.
if it's a human or not? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's really kind of irrelevant. That's one where I'm like, it's all about the experience and the results. I mean,
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I'm glad that was a good find there, Dave. I'm glad you pulled that.
Thank you. The artificial intelligence helped me find the best clip from that episode.
Are you kidding?
Maybe. All right. So here's the next one is a multiple visitor to the pod, Dr. Elizabeth Torres, psychologist and professor of cognitive science at Rutgers, So we talked about a lot about sensory motor neuroscience, and specifically, like movement, rhythm, and those kind of things, and understanding autism. She talked about some recent advances in research. You want to talk about what you remember about Dr. Elizabeth?
Yeah, just building on what you said, what she's doing is, researching these areas that we were talking about earlier, the brain body disconnect, how this is all motor driven. The challenges that so many autistic individuals find are actually based in the body. And she's setting out to prove that. And the other thing I loved about this initial episode was that she actually called out the autism industrial complex, and really used that as a driving force explaining this, so-called autism epidemic, and called out what she saw in terms of what's happening with RFK Jr. and some of these other conspiracy theories. So she was just a brilliant guest, and that's why she's been on twice, and we're actually talking about having her on after the first of the year.
And we should. So yeah, this is her, as you say, talking about the controversy and sort of her role in it. This clip runs about 2:40, David. So you just pipe up if you think we've heard enough, but hard to hear too much from Elizabeth. Let's listen.
So you were kind of thrown into the controversy from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
And so how would you explain? Because again, I think for so many people who see autism as a behavior issue or a behavioral disorder, that's starting to change, particularly I think within some of the communities that we share, the spelling community and such. But that's still a relatively small community. So how would you explain, kind of for those hearing for the first time, what it means to see autism as sensory motor difference rather than a behavioral disorder?
Well, first of all, the behavioral disorder is a made up thing that somebody made it up to create a problem so they could create a solution for it. And I'm going to give you a solution to these problems. You better come to me for it. So it's made up. It's a business model. It's not real in terms of that it works. It doesn't work. I mean, we know it doesn't work since the early 60s, where
Wow, no kidding.
Behaviorists in animals would stop learning, and that's where they stopped reporting what was happening. I mean, this is known in the neuroscience, behavioral neuroscience community, where animals are trained to do a task, to perform a task, so that you can record spikes from their brain, so that you can learn and build preclinical trial models and genetically modified models and study phenomena under those conditions. So we know this for a long time, but it was a powerful industry. And so it started in 1970. Lovaas, a student of Skinner at UCLA, created this behavioral conditioning technique, which was originally, it was actually targeting sort of feminine boys at the time. So that's what they would call it. And it was known as gay conversion therapy or something like that. That was the original. Then they switched to this applied behavioral analysis, fancy name, which doesn't have analysis of any kind that we call as in my neck of the woods.
Right.
A joke, like, what are you doing? This is,
what are you analyzing? Yeah, right.
What are you analyzing? Numbers that you create by hand that you made up, and you then it's like really like non-science at all, non-reproducible, not open, nothing. It's like 25,000 words or something that you memorize and you get certified.
Just calling it like it is.
Yeah.
And again, resonating with so many parents, including myself. We did ABA because that's what you did. That's what you were told to do. This is, you're told that this is the only quote unquote data-driven model, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And go for it, Stone. And I know, there's some people who will still defend it. They say it's helped their kids. And I say, great, I'm glad for you. But for the vast majority, and again, just speaking for what Stone has shared, he hated it. And then, obviously our goal was always communication. Help him. Will this help him communicate? Then we're going to try it. And we were told this would help him communicate. And it did nothing of the sorts because it couldn't, because it had nothing to do with the motor, right? It didn't address what the real issue is. It's not a behavior. Communication is not a behavior.
Right. And you'd think the experts would take their own advice, because usually the experts would tell you, you've met one kid with autism, you've met one kid with autism. That's all you've met. And yet, we experienced the same thing. It was like, ABA is the best, just do it, And it's not for every kid. It's not for every kid.
So the next clip is going to be Libby Ralston. We visited her home in late September during our great autism advocacy adventure, which we'll talk about in a bit. But Libby is famous through the telepathy tapes. And lost her son, JP, unfortunately, a couple of years ago to a seizure. Has since maintained a strong connection to the community, including through a foundation. Just a remarkable woman, and was just a really, I thought, a remarkable conversation.
It proved. One thing I will say that I'm glad this person was. There was a family who had been spelling. I asked the dad. I said, "Did it make all the other things go away?" And he said, "No, it didn't." And that's the truth. It did not change those things, but it gave him a voice. And now I knew what he thought about. I knew what he liked. I got to hear his own voice as far as his personality, what his beliefs were, it was magic. Yeah, it did, because he could let me know if he really wasn't, I think about this, parents drag their kids to things all the time because they don't know that their kid may really feel bad. John Paul had a lot of pain. And these parents are dragging them for 8 hours at this ABA facility where can you imagine having to do stuff when you feel like hell? And so with John Paul, I could say, I said, "How are you doing?" And he came up to me with the board, and he said it hurt so bad. And yes. And so, but he wouldn't, I don't know if I would have understood what was happening if he couldn't spell out to me.
That's kind of a clip, that's kind of put together from, obviously a longer clip that, speaking of AI, an AI tool uses to help pull together some of these excerpts that we share on social media. So cut out the part where she talked about why he was in so much pain. And he had pica, which a lot of people recognize as kids eat things without having control. It's an impulsive behavior. And in his case, I think he had ingested nails or something horrible like that, and was able to tell her about it. And she said, how powerful is that to be able to say that other than just hurt, which I can relate to as well. I mean, that's
same. Yeah, same. My son's verbal, but he's rarely able to communicate what's wrong with him. In fact, if we ask him if he feels sick, he will protest vigorously because he doesn't want us to think he's sick, because then he might have to stay home that day, which would be an unwelcome change to his routine. So to have a way to actually get in there and hear what and it's heartbreaking to think that anyone can be in pain and not be able to ask for help.
And that gets back to the core of the mission in terms of raising awareness around this mode of communication, helping to try to expose it to others, because it can be as simple as the example I gave where Stone has been able to tell me when he has a headache and I can give him ibuprofen, which is, great. Again, none of us want to have to suffer through that. But we also know of another young adult, non-speaker, who was able to identify pain that turned out to be testicular cancer.
Wow.
And identify that and work with his teachers through, smelling to communicate. And again, it was a good outcome. He was able to go into remission, and that's never probably would have been possible without this. So again, it's kind of obviously both ends of the spectrum there, but it's just something that as speakers, we obviously take for granted.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now we get up finally into recent days. And when was your road trip with
End of September.
End of September,
it was the last couple of weeks of September, just into early October.
So this was great because you visited New York and Washington, right?
And Atlanta. Yeah. So we actually
Atlanta.
started in Atlanta and
Right.
then went to DC. And like I said, that's where we met Libby in person, met some other non-speaking families, and then went to DC, and then finished in New York.
And in New York, you were able to speak to members of a corporation, and they had prepared they made a big deal out of you when you came to give this presentation and had many people watching remotely.
They broadcast it to all of their different offices. This is the largest PR and communications firm in the world, Burson Communications. Their inclusion and impact group hosted us and, like you said, promoted us internally. So we had an audience there internally and literally worldwide. And it was a really special day.
And so in this clip here, you're describing how that went with Stone, basically Stone addressing the onlookers. All right, here it is.
Then it was on to New York, which was kind of like each stop kind of got bigger and bigger. And as I said, New York, we had set up this presentation at Burson PR and Communications. They have about 6,000 employees worldwide. They had arranged to have it beamed around the world to their other offices and recorded. So it was a really big moment for us to be able to share the story, and it went great. Gabe told our story. Stone was up there, and kind of the mic drop moment was at the end during the Q&A. When the employees asked, how should we talk to our neurotypical kids about, addressing neurodiverse students like you? What can we do to make it better? And Stone, and I'll paraphrase here, but basically said, make sure that they, I think he said, teach them to treat us with kindness. We hear everything they say, even when they call us retards. And it was just kind of like, silence in the room.
This, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back for producing an excellent episode here, but it's interesting how all the clips we've had, it really is kind of a journey, when Stone, the roots of how Stone began to be able to communicate, and some of the stumbles along the way. And now, not only is he communicating, but he's sharing his story with so many others. And I know you're proud, so I'm not going to ask you if you're proud, but I'm
amazed also.
Yeah.
That's what strikes me kind of going through this way, Dave, is again, we go back, we were saying, okay, it was a year ago we started this, all right, let's start this little podcast. A year ago, I didn't know anything. We didn't know anything about brain enhancement therapy. That wasn't on our radar. Even using AI to help with Stone, and that wasn't on our radar.
Right.
A trip to the East Coast, going to Washington, D.C., Burson. No, are you kidding me? That wasn't. So when I think about it from that perspective, it's like, wow, what a year it's been. Obviously, it's been huge, but it gets me that much more excited to think about the next year. Like we don't know what's coming.
Right. And with, things changing as rapidly as they are, the possibilities are exciting. AI is one example, but I am a cockeyed optimist usually, and I like to think that the awareness from autism has been increased by leaps and bounds during our lifetimes, and
without a doubt.
And I like to think that continues upward without hitting any sort of plateau. It's never perfect, and the struggles with the Department of Education and school districts everywhere are still far from perfect, and that might be being generous, but the advances, the understanding, and the willing to try new things, to me, that's the story that we're telling. So that is exciting.
Yeah.
Onward and upward.
Onward and upward. And again, I just have to say, I couldn't do it without Stone. Stone is the driver in so many ways of all of this. And he has a vision. He's extremely motivated. I have a preview of some of the things that may come out in the next year that I think are going to be as, if not more, impactful than what we've been able to see this past year. So, I'm just telling everyone, stay tuned. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't touch
And
that dial.
don't touch that dial because it's going to be, we're just scratching the surface. It's a cliche, but it's true. I mean, we're still just kind of just starting.
And if you have ideas for the show, we do remind people, but why don't you please tell people because
yeah, absolutely.
Obviously we're open for business. We usually record about a month or so in advance, but not much more than that. So if you have your own story, or even if you just have a question for us, please.
Yeah, I mean, please. We love the feedback, as I mentioned earlier. Just hearing the stories. We just want to know what resonates. And again, if you have an idea for a guest, a topic, something you want to see us talk about, you can email me at david.koffer@hey.com. I also have a website. It's davidkoffer.com, where there's a contact form. You can reach out that way, and you can read my blog posts, get some other additional information that way. But we really do want to continue to build the community. It means so much to know that even if it's just one person, that we're making an impact out there. So to all of those who have reached out, thank you. And to those who haven't, please do.
Congratulations. I have this story in my head. This will make sense in a minute. But my mom told me I had a cool mom. And in the 80s, I was too young to go to a concert, but she went to a Bruce Springsteen concert. And she said, David, you won't believe it. After playing for 2 hours, he came out and he said, I'm just getting warmed up. And that's the way I feel about this podcast. We're just getting warmed up.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you, Dave. And again, thank you, everyone. And we'll catch you next time.